I'm pissed off. I'm fucking livid. Look, I can't even explain how pissed off I am at the ACC. The Australian CrossFit Championship was the worst run comp I've ever been to. And that's just not my opinion. After releasing my first video about this topic, the worst CrossFit competition, check it out if you haven't already, I received so many messages of support from many people, a lot of higher level people than I would have expected to reach out to me, which I thank you guys. I listened, I read your feedback, and I have cultivated a second video in spite of the things that I missed in the first. This one's going to be better than the first one. You know why? Because I'm going to sit down with an athlete. What I looked at in that first video was purely just a spectator's point of view. But I didn't even consider about the athlete's point of view. I'm going to sit down with Evan Morris, who also is throughout our channel, and he's going to talk about things that went wrong in his eyes, things that could have been improved, things that he wasn't able to prepare for when it comes to competition. Hope you enjoy the video. Like and subscribe. Let's get into it. So we're going to start, Evan. We're going to talk about probably the most important thing that I should have covered in the last video, but you actually brought it to my attention, and it was drug testing. Now, I received a message from someone that I won't mention the name of, how in the previous year of the Australian CrossFit Championship, they drug tested the same athlete on Friday and on Sunday. So one athlete got drug tested twice in the same week. Now, they called it random testing. However, that doesn't seem too random to me. It looks like they were focused on this athlete. Obviously, both tests came back negative is the right word? Yeah. Negative. But this time around, it wasn't the same. Tell us about.
Well, from my experience, at no point I wasn't drug tested at all while I was there, and I know it is random. But as far as I was concerned, I talked to a lot of the other athletes. No one got drug tested at all. Even the podium finishes, as far as I know, I could be wrong about that, but nothing was given to us or told about any form of drug testing. I just remember when I was in Dubai, when we did that one, they made it very clear that they were drug testing and that it was happening. And I just felt like if I get drug tested or not, I know that I'm not cheating. But the thing is CrossFit already has a bit of a bad reputation for drug cheats and it happening in our sport. And for a sanctioned event to not to do it, or if they did, not to even advertise the fact that it was being done, I think is a bit of an issue, if I'm completely honest.
Yeah, and I mean, a lot of the athletes that competed at this comp are well-known athletes who've been in the sport for many years. Even then, that being said, you know, anyone can be on anything at any time. I think as an athlete, and if you definitely know that, you know, you've done everything right, you know, you follow the rules and you eat accordingly to make sure that you're not taking anything you shouldn't, to show up to a competition that could have individuals that are fully enhanced, robotic, cyborg-like individuals could deter you from competing in the future. And especially as an international athlete coming overseas, this is foreign waters, you know, this is a different area, different place. People have an expectation. Especially at a sanctioned event, they have an expectation for things to be followed as code, like the bigger events like Dubai, like Wodapalooza, where they were testing athletes, and we found that one of the athletes at Dubai was caught. Yeah. So to have an event that was completely the opposite and no testing, and in the previous year they had too much testing on the same athlete, it doesn't make sense. It's like double standards almost. Now, our second topic of today is actually something that we had a conversation with one of the officials about, which was what I would call athlete bias. Now, they had a term that they used for it. I don't know if you remember what it was called.
Yeah, they wanted to look after their heavy hitters.
Heavy hitters, yeah.
So, like, personally, I was happy with my performance, happy with how I did. And I know my position, my popularity and everything like that within the sport. But I had an event organizer that came to me and was talking to me about athletes that they needed to look after more than other athletes. And for me, I was very well looked after by the staff. But that in turn for me is an issue because there's people that have killed themselves to try and make it. They shouldn't be treated by the staff any differently just because they don't have a big Instagram following or a big reputation or they haven't been to the games or anything like that. So to come out and say that they need to look after their heavy hitters more than the other athletes, like, I think that's disingenuous of the whole situation, to be completely honest with you.
And we talk about that. That's a follow-on of our next subject, which is being an athlete. looking for things like sponsors, putting yourself out there on the TV and trying to grow your social media presence, it becomes very hard when they don't have things like we covered off in the last one, like Livestream. They don't post highlights of specific athletes, or even on top of that, they're not advertising the fact that, you are competing.
Yeah.
From your perspective, like as an athlete where, your life relies on sponsors, competing, products, etc., like how does that make you feel?
Yeah, like I've been pretty open and honest about trying to, from my own personal experience, to professionalize CrossFit and become a full-time athlete and be able to have the financial support from sponsors. But there's a give and a take on that. So when I get these agreements with sponsors, it's like, I'm going to wear your stuff. I'm going to get content created of me competing on the biggest stage in your clothes, in your whatever it is, and getting highlight reels and all that sort of content done. But then when I get there and the content creator or my videographer who I normally have isn't allowed to do that, it hurts my ability to make an income. And I get that the competition wants to obviously own the media and everything like that. But at the end of the day, if you want to have a professional sport, you need to allow that sort of stuff. And it's been shown that the best way for most athletes to make money is content creation, is to be able to do highlight reels. And some of the videographers that I work with were able to make some content for me, but a lot of athletes, they just weren't able to. And that's how they're going to build their name, build their brand, is these cool highlight videos that their sponsors can put up, and it builds their brand and it gives value to the sponsors. If a sponsor's given me $2,000 to compete there and then I can't create any content for that, well, then they've just lost their money. So their chance of then sponsoring me again decreases. And then what's the value in them sponsoring me again if there's so much restrictions and prevention for that?
And that's exactly right. And I've even been hit up by a few different vendors that were at that event, sharing their same frustrations as Evan, but from a vendor's point of view, not being able to have a media person take photos, take videos, be able to showcase the athlete's ability as well as what they're wearing so that they can make money off that. These vendors paid a ridiculous amount of money to be there. And in the first 2 days, I don't know if anyone actually bought anything because there was so little people in the venue. Maybe the athletes, but even then, like, I know for a fact that the vendors were giving out a lot of free shit. So like Evan got quite a few items, putting himself out there, but how does that help them make money if Evan's not getting exposed or the other athletes that they're sponsoring? So I feel like even on top of that, like the lack of the live stream really not only affected you, but it also affected your sponsors, the vendors, and pretty much anyone else that was looking at trying to gain a social media. Now, one thing I did cover on the last video was something like Matt McLeod. When he went to the games, he got a huge following. He gained 10,000 followers. Now, you won an event. That would normally grant you quite a few followers. People were like, damn, this guy's strong. He could get through a clean and jerk ladder fast. But apart from that one highlight reel that we saw from the morning chalk up, there was nothing.
Yeah, and I think that's an issue in itself. And I think there needs to be a bit of communication or a bit of better work between these events and the athletes. Because the events, I'm paying to be there. So I paid almost $200 registration to compete at their event. So then they can showcase me. Without me and the other athletes, they've got no event. And then to put so much restrictions on that, like, I think that's an issue in and of itself. Especially when I negotiate with sponsors or I'm trying to help other athletes, trying to build their following, or they come to me and they're asking about how to get sponsors to pay them and get more out of that. The thing is to be able to sell themselves. And if they can't do that on that stage without a live stream or without being able to get footage done or highlight reels like we talked about, well, then that's just delaying the whole process, and they can't become full-time athletes or professional athletes, or even just get some sort of help and support from the whole situation.
And then speaking of issues with the athletes, and like we look at athletes themselves and trying to prepare themselves for the unknown and unknowable, which was their whole theme of the competition, we talk about scoring mix-up. Now, there was quite a lot of scoring mix-up in this competition. Also, I've had different messages from different people saying one judge told him one thing, and the different event got to do a different thing. For example, one heat got to start on the rowers, the other had to start behind the rowers. And that, even though a few seconds, that can be the difference between first place and 10th place.
Yeah.
Probably the one that I want to talk about the most is the handstand walk double under event. The 70 double unders, 10 meter handstand walk elimination round. Now, anything with an elimination needs to be treated carefully, if making sure the finer details are important, because it can be the difference between you getting out in the first round and making it to the final heat. The way that they had the elimination was the 2 slowest people from that heat would be eliminated, and then the next heat would come on. It would not be based on your time that you got for that workout. So you could be in the top heat with these massive elite athletes, and then you could get out straight away, or you could be in the kind of lower heats that they usually don't showcase, the ones that are easier to get through, and you could do half the effort but still blitz the time and get into the next round. What are your thoughts?
When it comes to the events and the changes and things like that, I can only control what I can control. So I wasn't too stressed out about that sort of stuff. I just had to take it as it was. I have a coach and a management team who can stress about them fucking up scores and things like that. So personally, that's not something I really focused on, because there's nothing I can do. It's an uncontrollable. I can only control my effort. I can't control the parameters of what they want me to compete in. I can have an opinion on all the media side of things and me developing myself as a professional athlete. But when it comes to the event, I just think that there's small things that they needed to improve on. I personally just wasn't quick enough on the elimination. They could have done it better. They were eyeballing it. It is what it is. But my biggest issue with that is I had teammates that were given completely different scores. So one of my teammates, her score was given to another girl, and then that girl's score was given to her. And it was the difference between her finishing, if she got the score that she actually achieved, she would have finished 4 places higher, which when you're in the top 10 and you jump up 4 more spots, that's huge. That's the difference between getting more exposure, better sponsors, things like that. So to have a stuff up like that, they stuffed up her time by almost a minute. That's an issue, and that causes problems. And then they had 12 people going at once, and one end of the arena, they had this carpet mat rolled out, but it had a lip. So if you're doing double unders and there's a lip there, it's going to get caught on the rope every single time. And every single athlete that was down that end, their rope got caught on that lip every single time. And in a sprint event, you're done. The minute you miss a rep and it gets caught on the mat, you're out. And when that happens 3 or 4 times on high-level athletes, that 70 double unders should be done in 40 seconds. It's done. You're out. I think that is more of an issue than anything else. It's it needs to be consistent. You can't have, if you're down one end, you're pretty much not progressing forward and you're scoring lower. And then for them not to even address that issue and to, once they were made aware of the problem, to just ignore it, I think that's an issue. That's something that you can have control over, and that's something you can easily fix if you put that effort in.
So essentially, there was 2 sides of the mats. One side was at a huge disadvantage.
Yeah, 100%. So half the field was at a disadvantage.
Wow. So and then on top of that, we something that I saw, which was,
I wasn't present for this, but I was told about it. It was quite funny.
It was comical with that. The Maddie Sturt situation. Now, nothing wrong with Maddie Sturt. She was just doing her best to compete on the day, but she completed 70 double unders in 20 seconds. I shit you not. She stopped because the judge told her to go. Now, this judge, obviously, once again, it's in the time, the space. We all understand, her perception of double unders could be different from mine. But I don't even think it's physically possible, apart from those speed rope world championships, to complete that many double unders that fast. The look on Maddie's face when she was told to go was, holy fuck, I'm not done yet. So she finished the round in 30 seconds when ladies were only halfway through their double unders. And as another competitor, you're pretty much just well, what the hell? How did she complete? That's impossible. So stuff ups like that could also eliminate people, because Maddie could have tripped that round. She might not have made it. And then at the end of the day, someone else could have made it further into that workout, getting a better placing. Now, one of the last kind of things I want to touch on is the podium, and as well as the team competition. Now, these are very small and minor, but still issues that made people's experiences worse. Firstly, the team competition. The first day that we were in the arena, the teams did an event in the morning straight up. Then their next event wasn't for like nearly 6 or 7 hours later at the end of the day. And it was just like a sprint event that went for like 2 minutes. So these athletes had to stick around all day, once again, not knowing when the next event was going to be on, having to sit through countless events, not knowing when to eat, when to warm up, etc., and then being called on. And I feel like as an athlete, that's really unfair. Like, how do you prepare for something that you may or may not know is still happening?
Yeah, well, you can't. You're just stuck sitting there and waiting. And like, being most athletes probably stayed fairly close. If they'd known that, they could have gone back to their hotels and recovered, or gone and done something else instead of just sort of sitting there and waiting. You can still be unknown and unknowable with a schedule.
Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Keep the events hidden, and you can just announce the events before each person goes, like before that event starts. Like, that's fine, and it still keeps the athletes guessing. But there's no way. Like, I personally received like 50 messages on the first day, people asking me when I was going to compete or what time I was on, and I sit there and just send the same message. I don't know. And like, after a while, I just got sick of replying to people, so I ended up stopping. But you can still keep it pretty unknown and novel. They do it at the games. Everyone knows when like there's events on. It's just they might not know what the event is until it's released. But there's still a schedule. People still know that there's something going on.
And then finally, the podium. When the athletes actually achieved first, second, third, they got nothing. They got no trophy, no medal, no check, nothing to signify that they've won. All they got to do is stay on the podium. And back to the team competition, their last event was at 12 o'clock on that Sunday. They had to wait till 5 o'clock in the afternoon to stand on a podium and get nothing. How would that make you feel? If you hit that top 3 position, you earn your position after 4 days to get nothing.
Oh, I'd be pretty shitty. Like, if they'd made it clear from the start that there was no money or anything involved, and I'm not sure if there was, as far as I know, there wasn't, but not to receive anything, like even a medal or something to signify that you'd won or come first, second, or third. Like, I feel like that makes the whole situation worth it. Do you know what I mean? Just to get that. Like, I'm sure fucking old boy Jay's super excited that he got his ticket, but to have something to signify that as well, like a trophy or a medal or something just small, I think would have just made the whole situation a little bit better. And if they didn't give prize money because of financial situations, because they didn't make enough return, which is probably a genuine reality of the situation, that's fine. But I feel like as a business model, there's some really simple things that could be done to build your brand and to allow, even when we go back to content creation, like to allow people to do that, to create content. You're just hyping up your own event even more so that next year people want to go. Do you know what I mean? I think after all this, next year's might be smaller or anything like that. I know personally, like, I probably won't do it again because I just don't like being stuffed around. But at the end of the day, I can only control what I can control. But when my team, like my coach or my trainers and my management team, are getting blocked off at the pass, eventually that's going to flow onto me to make that decision if I want them to go through that stress and drama again, to have to deal with all that. And I mean, this is a professional sport now. All these people are paid. Like, I know personally, I paid a lot of money to have people there to help me out and to do things, and in accommodation. And if I wasn't able to do hold up my end of the bargain with my sponsors, like it makes it hard. It's difficult conversations to have to try and continue those relationships in the future.
Last thing, and this is going to be a little bit off topic, but it's also on topic because it's fucking stupid. How's your head? After the strict handstand push-ups. Tell us about doing strict handstand push-ups to concrete.
Yeah, that was a bit rough. Like, they did have like rubber matting there, but anyone who's been in a gym, like, it's just not safe. And it's like, I would never get my clients to do it. And like professional athletes, I wouldn't get them to definitely not do it. And I feel like there needs to be like a set of standards at least. It's like, I'm all for parallel handstand push-ups. I think they're a great test. But to doing it to the floor, like, I'm lucky I got a thick neck from having a big head that, like, my neck's fine. But I know a lot of people that their position was compromised and they have sore necks. Like, it could have easily someone come down a little bit too hard. They put their neck out and then their weekend's done. And it's just not worth the risk. I had a teammate who in the flags, like it was a cool event. I get it, and it was something different and something cool, but there was a lot of chance and luck to it. If you were on an outside lane and no one ran to your flag, well, then you were guaranteed to get it. But I know I had one of my teammates who he dove for a flag and got a small dislocation of his shoulder and had to pull out for the weekend. So I think there's certain ways you can mitigate risk. Using an ab mat or some sort of matting for a handstand push-up mitigates risk. Not having contact in sport, in CrossFit, mitigates injury. Do you know what I mean? Like his weekend was done because they wanted to try something different. But the thing is like I used to play football and I used to get hit all the time and I was prepared for that. But I stopped doing that because I wanted to come to a sport where my risk of injury wasn't from physical contact. So it was a cool event and I enjoyed it. But I think in future, just the risk of injury to athletes is just not worth it. And if you've got an athlete a top tier athlete there, like, I don't know, Cara Webb or even James Newbury, and then they dislocate their shoulder or hurt themselves on a contact event, like their season's done. So I think the risk there is just not worth it for especially high level athletes when that's their livelihood and it's put out of contact. If it happens during a snatch or during a rope climb or something like that, that's to be expected. But when things can easily be mitigated, I think they need to take that on board and they need to make adjustments to that for sure. But yeah, my next one.
There you go. Exactly. Well, thanks, guys. That's going to be our video today. What do you think? What are your thoughts on those topics we covered? The drug testing, athlete bias, the problems with scoring, the vendors, the sponsors, the lack of content creation, and finally, ramming your neck into a concrete floor. That's going to be our video today. I'm going to put up a petition to get the Australian CrossFit Championship revoked and move it over to an event that was way better, something like the Torium Pro. That's going to be the video. Hope you guys enjoy. Stay a beast.